Welcome to another episode of ChoralEd. I'm your host, Micah Bland. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Today we begin a new series on selecting and introducing repertoire to your ensemble. And to start things off, we'll spend a little time talking about selecting appropriate repertoire. Now, what do I mean by appropriate? In this context, I'm talking about the difficulty of the music you select. In my opinion and in my experience, the difficulty of repertoire is the most common mistake new teachers and even experienced teachers make with their ensembles. And it's very easy to happen because teachers hear a song at a conference, or they are just perusing a publisher's website and hear it there, and they go, oh, I like that song, done, check, let's move on to the next song, right? And what happens is they over-program, and so they select way too difficult music for their ensembles. And it happens just because they want to do that song. They, as a teacher, like that song, they want to do it, but it's really not appropriate for their singers at that time, and maybe they don't have the ensemble that's capable of doing that. And so as they teach it, they introduce it, they spend all their time just learning notes and rhythms because that's all they have time for, because it's way too difficult for their singers. And so what I suggest instead is a balanced approach where you select one song that's slightly easier than the ensemble's capabilities, you pick one song at their level, and one song that is slightly more difficult. Now, the important word here I used is slightly. You don't want it to be way too easy or way too difficult. But in this balanced approach, the slightly easier song allows you time to really refine and further develop techniques. It also it takes less time to rehearse that song, just in general. The slightly more difficult song allows you to present new challenges, and it also keeps it interesting so everything's not way too easy. That's another problem. It's a little less common of a problem that people select all too easy music, but it allows you time then to work on that song by selecting an easier song. But in the challenge song, you can then develop new vocal techniques and new approaches to singing, and it gives them a challenge to work towards. But again, it's slightly less difficult and slightly more challenging. Another consideration when selecting appropriate repertoire is the voicing or the Divisi in the song. Now, this should be an obvious one, but people still ignore it. If your ensemble has like 4 tenors in it, selecting a song that has Divisi tenors throughout the whole thing is not going to be the best choice for you and your ensemble. They're going to struggle just because of the Divisi or the voicing. Now, you might say, well, I'll pick a 2-part song, a 2-part tenor bass song, or a 2-part essay song. Sometimes it's easier with a 2-part song, but there are still plenty of difficult songs out there that are 2-part. For example, I think of the Carmina Burana in Taberna, which is just for tenor and basses. There is some 3-part splits in there, but it's mostly 2-part and unison, and it's a very difficult song because of the text and the speed and the range of the tenors and basses that the tenors and basses have to sing. So just because the voicing might seem easier doesn't mean the song is easier, so don't fall into that trap. You also need to consider the capabilities of your ensemble. For example, you may have amazing basses and just okay altos. Maybe they don't read so well, they're a little weaker in their sound production. And so selecting a song where the alto line is exposed a lot or has a lot of solo moments for the alto line, that might not be your best choice because you're featuring the altos. Well, then if you have a great bass section, pick a song that features more of the basses. And selecting these songs is time consuming. It's difficult because you have to take all these considerations into account. And for me, I might pick 1 or 2 songs fairly quickly. The last song, it will take me 2, 3, 4 days just to find that perfect last song that fits all of these elements, that is just the right challenge or just the right easy amount. It's time consuming, and it's important because that's what you're working on. That is, in essence, your textbook. That is the music you're working on for the next 8 weeks or maybe longer. Also, in consideration of the capabilities of your ensemble, maybe consider if you have a lot of Divisi in the song and you have a smaller group, and that might work well for your group if it has to be sustained, legato, a cappella, these long 8-measure phrases. You're going to be in a world of hurt trying to get your smaller group with a lot of Divisi, 2 to 3 on a part, to sustain that sound. So just be mindful of what your ensemble is capable of and compare to what you want to do, and make sure you select music that helps your singers develop to where you want them to be vocally. You also need to select, of course, diverse repertoire that is representative of various styles, cultures, religious backgrounds, as well as musical era. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this one because this is a very common, popular topic at a lot of conferences. I hope you attend those conferences and those sessions on diverse repertoire. And I also plan to have a series in the future on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But what I do want to highlight here is selecting diverse musical eras. A lot of teachers just focus on the newer 20th, 21st century music. It's great music, but there's also a lot of great songs from the Renaissance, the Baroque, and the Classical era, and they're very accessible. You might think, oh, those are a little more difficult, and some of them are, but there's a lot of great music from those eras as well. Also diverse music from Latin America and other cultures that we might not think of. I also want to share with you all some areas of music where it will automatically make the music more difficult or, in some ways, easier. The first here is text. A foreign language will automatically add 1 to 2 weeks to your rehearsal process just to learn that foreign language, as well as you're looking at memorizing a foreign language. It's very challenging for your students. And a lot of teachers, especially beginning teachers, don't take into account how much extra time is required to teach a foreign language. You also want to consider the appropriateness of the text, that you're selecting music that is just be mindful that some texts, especially middle school boys, can make inappropriate. For example, one of my favorite as a middle schooler was the Latin text, Christus factus est, and go, oh, factus, oh, like it's a curse word, right? There's other texts out there that are just a little questionable. They're a little strange. I can think of a few, like, for example, Randall Thompson, one of the movements from Frostiana. It's a little strange. It's a little odd for a tenor bass group. And so just be mindful of the text that you are selecting. A cappella music will also automatically add 1 to 2 weeks to the rehearsal process. It takes time to refine that sound without the support of the piano. Singing it in tune, everything is more exposed. Now, I want to take a moment here to highlight that just because it's in a foreign language or a cappella makes it more difficult means, oh, I just won't do those songs, right? Well, that's not the best approach. And what I actually encourage is 1 foreign language and 1 a cappella song per concert, per group. You might say, well, that's a lot, but it will really help you develop your singers. Now, also along the lines of a cappella music, it can be easier by selecting music where the piano significantly doubles the voices. This is common in Baroque music, makes it a little easier, where the instruments or the piano is playing every part exactly with the choir, right? Makes it super easy. Texture is another element that can be easier or challenging, and that is homophonic and homorhythmic music is typically easier. Now, of course, there can be cluster chords and tight harmonies that make it difficult, but rhythmically, a singer knows that they are right in time because they're with everybody else in the choir rhythmically. Polyphonic music, however, becomes incredibly difficult because they have to maintain their own part. They might have the entrance given to them by a director, but after that, they're on their own. If they get off rhythmically, they're in trouble, right? They have no alignment with another voice part homorythmically to help them out. And that becomes very challenging for the singers. The last thing I want to mention here is this repetitiveness of the song. Again, it can make it easier or more difficult. If the song repeats a chorus or a verse and it's identical, makes it super simple, right? You teach the chorus once, they now know half the song, right? Because it repeats so much. The flip side of that is when there's repetitions that are slightly different or more significantly different, it really throws the singers off because they try to sing a previous chorus or they have difficulty memorizing it because it changes just so subtly that they kind of go on autopilot or they forget what the changes are. And that can make it really challenging for the singers. So there you have it. Those are some of the considerations for selecting appropriate music. Some final reminders that I want to share with you is just because a song is easier doesn't mean it's less interesting or less beautiful. There's some amazingly beautiful and powerful songs that are simple. Doesn't mean that it's inferior to a more complex, difficult song. Be sure to select repertoire that is appropriate for the capabilities of your ensemble. Don't pick songs just because you like them, right? So you should like the song, but don't just pick that because you like it. Make sure it is appropriate for your ensemble. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I hope you continue to inspire the future leaders of our world through this wonderful gift we call music. Thanks.